It's Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers with tips and advice on landscaping and gardening. Here's Fernando Martinez.
Yes, indeed. Welcome, and thanks for tuning in and being here with me on this Patio Side Chats with Chaparral. That is Chaparral Pavers of Santa Maria, your local landscaping and paver company. And just a reminder, if you'd like to hear any of the past shows or any part of this show, you can always find them on our YouTube channel. You can go to our website, ilovetocomehome.com, and check out the link there to the YouTube channel, or you can just go to YouTube and type in Chaparral Pavers, and we've got all our radio shows there and lots of advice and tips and tricks on landscaping and gardening and keeping your landscape lifestyle to the best that it can be. And today's show, I want to talk about Flagstone. It's something that we've used a lot in the past and throughout the years, and we still use it, although its popularity has come down as being the main material for patios and things. And but it's still relevant, and I wanted to talk about how the use of Flagstone has changed, at least in my opinion, and what you can do with it. And, you know, if you do make patios or walkways, or what are the gaps, kind of how do you lay it? What do you put in between? And so I wanted to talk about that. And then also steps have been coming up quite a bit recently in my jobs and estimates, and as I'm out there in the field and kind of keeping my finger on the pulse of what's happening in landscaping today. And so I wanted to bring that to you and talk about steps, when we can eliminate steps when it's appropriate, or if we need them, if we're putting them in new or replacing them, or how that's done, and kind of what are the norms, you know, what heights are to code, you know, what's too low of a step, when are steps appropriate. So that's kind of the show today. Let's start off with Flagstone and talk about how Flagstone is used today in comparison to how it was used in the years past. So let's get started. Now, I assume everybody knows what Flagstone is. It's that flat stone that kind of looks like a flag, which is why they call it Flagstone. And it's usually about somewhere between 1.5 to 2 inches thick. It can come in large pieces, which is what I really like, and mostly what we're going to be talking about here on the show. And it also comes in small little pieces, which to me is a little less useful. But again, this is all subjective and style, and, you know, do what works for you, of course. So the big pieces are about 4 feet. They can be as high as 4.5 feet tall, and they're vertical on the pallets, and they're maybe 2 feet, 2.5 feet wide. And some of them, even within the pallet, can be like 3 by 3, almost square. And they stack them vertically upright on the pallets, and that's what they call select style Flagstone. The smaller pieces are maybe 12 to 18 inches, you know, little squares, or usually triangles or whatever natural shapes they are, but they lay them flat horizontally on the pallets, and you get a lot of pieces. You might get hundreds of pieces on one pallet, where the select larger Flagstone, you maybe get 18 to 20 pieces on a pallet. Now, a pallet usually weighs about 2 tons, and you'll get maybe 100 square feet per ton of coverage. Now, again, that depends on how you lay it, but that should give you some ballpark of what you would need for a project. You measure length times width. Let's say you're doing a Flagstone project and you want to order Flagstone. Figure right around 80 to 120 square feet per ton, and you're going to get about 2 tons per pallet. So, you know, that's kind of a good gauge. Now, what do you do with the Flagstone, and how does that differ from how we used to, you know, use it? And so there was a lot of popularity, I don't know, I say like the 70s, 80s, where maybe pavers weren't as prevalent, or, you know, stamping of concrete really hadn't taken off and becoming as popular as it has been. So Flagstone was a popular thing to lay down as a back patio. It's natural shapes, different colors. And you know, again, we use these terminology like Flagstone, but it can mean a lot of different things. Arizona Flagstone is the most common, and you see it used in tans and pinks. But there is a lot more types of flagstone folks out there besides just the Arizona flagstone. And we have some really neat vendors here on the Central Coast that can get browns and purples and blues and from all over different states. And they kind of name them, like Kentucky Bluestone, some from Tennessee. There's some nice brown ones called Cherokee, Three Rivers. It looks like water's gone over them. So now they can be a little more expensive. I think the Arizona flagstone is usually the least expensive one, probably because it's the range, due to its shipping. It's a lot closer. Arizona's a lot closer than Tennessee or Kentucky, but and the stones have different hardness too. So be careful. You don't want to get a very soft flagstone that'll break and crack very easily. And you want it to be at least 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick, in my opinion. And the large pieces are quite heavy, so it takes 2 people to move them and lift them. But I think in the end result, it's much easier because, like we were talking about, when they would make these back patios, they would pour concrete first, and then you put some sort of mortar down, and then they would use a lot the small pieces, like tiles almost, and then you put them down, and then you grout in between. And so the look, number one, is kind of dated now, and I'm not a huge fan of, doing it these days because it's kind of an old-fashioned way of doing back patios. And secondly, the functionality of it, the grout can pop out in between the stones because concrete cracks, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so the trouble is the concrete underneath cracks, the stones can move and shift due to that cracking of the concrete, and then the grout in between the stones becomes loose because there's nothing a whole lot holding that grout in there, and it pops out, or you see the grout cracks along the top, and it's extremely difficult to repair because the grout never matches when you go to re-grout it and try to fix it, or if you're trying to pull the stones up, and if a couple of them pop off and then you're trying to put them back in there, and the height can be different, and so it's not a very repairable or friendly to work on later on. And that, to me, is probably the biggest reason not to do a flagstone patio these days, unless you do it a little differently. And I'll tell you, the best way to lay flagstone is not putting the concrete underneath and not grouting it with concrete, is to just naturally lay it down and do a little bit of preps, some light base work and compact, and then a little bit of sand, so it's easy to level the stone and put it in there. But then you have to grout it with something to put in between, and there lies the problem with doing that system as a back patio, because usually it's decomposed granite or pea gravel or rock, or sometimes people want to put moss or things in between the joints, and I do want to talk about that a little bit. But all those things aren't good to have right outside of a back door. So if it's decomposed granite, it gets a little moist, and your shoes track it into the house, you can get gravel, and the DG is probably one of the worst ones because of the sharp edges. It can damage wood floors by scratching them. So, and pavers exist now, and so it's like they make pavers that look like flagstone. You can stamp concrete to look like flagstone. So there's better ways of doing it. And obviously, my opinion is, the pavers would be the best way because, again, concrete cracks, no matter how much you stamp it and stain it. And usually that look of that stamping, you're not really fooled by it. No one thinks it's flagstone. You can tell it's stamped concrete. So the nice thing about pavers is they're not trying to be anything else. They look really nice. The joints are all even and tight. It's repairable. It's much better as a back patio. So the use of flagstone, I think, should be away from the patio, either an extension of, or somewhere out in the garden where it's not appropriate to pour concrete or do pavers, because it looks too solid and not like a natural garden seating area. Benches, like if you have a bench out in the garden and you just want a couple of stones to put your feet on, you don't want to be, or even to walk out to get to it. They're great pathways through gardens. And the big pieces are so heavy, and again, it takes 2 people to lift these things at least, or a dolly and, some way of setting them down so you don't hurt yourself, because they can weigh 120, 180 pounds per piece. But what's good about that, once it gets down in the ground, you could put, a human body that weighs 180, 200 pounds or, whatever on one side of it, and it doesn't pop up. On the other side, they don't move and rock. And so they feel really good. You can take about 2 steps on the big pieces. If you try to use the little pieces like that without concreting them in and without grouting them, they could weigh 20 pounds, 40 pounds. When you step on one side of it, no matter how much you've leveled it and compacted it, the other side's going to pop up. They have a tendency to move, and you have a lot. It's hard to step on each one. You end up walking on whatever's in between them more than the flagstones. So the big, large, select flagstones are the way to go. Out in the garden paths and walkways that, areas where you want that natural look and you don't want a finished, patio look. So I think that is one of the best uses for them. Now, how do you gap them in between? Do you go right up touching, or 1 inch, 2 inches, you go 6 inches, 8 inches? I think comfortably anywhere from 6 inches to 12 inches apart from each other. And they're going to be natural shapes anyway. So even if one side is 6 inches, the other side's 8 inches, I think that's totally fine. And it looks good. And you want to leave enough space in between them so it still looks natural. And you don't want them all straight, lined up, like a sidewalk. You want them to kind of curve, and you can turn one sideways and have the edges stick out. Like if you had imagined like a walkway going, and one piece of flagstone is going a foot off to the left and the next one starts in more, that's totally fine. In fact, I prefer that. And if you can take 1-2 steps on one piece, it feels really comfortable. And you don't get any dated look with that. I think it still is a kind of a timeless look style-wise. And so that is something that, leave yourself nice wide gaps. Nothing, I wouldn't go over a foot, because then you're trying to hop from one stone to the next. You want it to walk it as you're laying it, going back and forth and making sure that it feels good and looks good. So really, that's kind of my idea on design and how to use them, different from how we're used to, making patios and concreting them and mortaring them. Now, there is one other product I want to talk about, what to grout them with, because decomposed granite seems to be the most common thing. Really, you can put any type of ground covering in between. It could even be bark. But just make sure that you dig down low enough so you can get enough material in between, and leaving that material slightly lower than the flagstones so that it doesn't pop up on top of the flagstones. Or when you go to wash off the stones, as they get dirty over time or dusty or things get on them and you just want to clean them off and wash them off, that the water has somewhere to go. Because I've noticed if whatever's surrounding the materials is too high, when you go to wash it off, all the dirt just stays on the stone and collects there like a puddle on there. And then even when it rains, it puddles and then stays on there, or sprinklers are going off. It can create calcium deposits and kind of mark up and make the stones not look good. And, so definitely dig it down. I would dig down the whole area 3 inches, put a light layer of road base, or if you're going to be using decomposed granite in between them, you can use decomposed granite down as the base and plate compact the whole area, get it nice and flat and level, smooth. Then a little bit of sand or loose DG underneath the stones. We do use a level and some hammers and, trying to compact them. But the idea is that you're not supposed to be perfect level like a sidewalk anyway. As long as there's not a tripping hazard, you're fine. And so where the stones come together, and we're talking about those 6-8 inch gaps, just make sure that one isn't sticking up higher than the other one right there, because then as you're walking, and you might want to catch your toe on that, and that's, doesn't feel good as you're walking up and down, or somebody could trip. So there is a product that we use in the paver world that's called polymer sand, and they now make one that will go up to those gaps that you have in between flagstones. And it's basically a polymer sand with rock in it that hardens, and it's not mortar, so it stays flexible. So that is a really good product. That's something that could be used. And if you absolutely love the look and you wanted to use it as a patio and you didn't care about dating the look or whatever, you just like that, and to you it's timeless, a classic, you want to do it, that polymer sand could be something really good that you could grout it with that possibly could still work as a patio. So look into that if you're thinking about doing that. And also I wanted to mention about using it in lawns. And if there's areas that you find yourself walking across your grass a lot and daily, sometimes if you're getting the mail, or if you're, heading to the side of the yard to take out the trash. That's what I did at my house. I come out my front door, I turn to the left, and I take the trash out every day, every night that way. And so I put some stones going that direction and even through the flower bed to get me to the sidewalk that I have where my trash cans are. So I just kind of, move the plants out of the way, put a few stones there. Walking through the grass, we did a job in Guadalupe where they went to get their mail daily and walked out the front door. It was just more convenient to walk across the grass through the planter and over to the mailboxes rather than, turning left and then right, going down the driveway and then turning again to go over down the sidewalk. And so any natural paths that you use a lot that, if you're barefoot or if you don't want to get your shoes wet in the wet grass or trampling through the bark in the planter beds, kicking it everywhere. These flagstones are really good, simple, easy project. You can put them out there, and even if the huge ones are too big, you can split them in half, and even half of one of those big ones, I think, is big enough to, do what we're talking about and have it really be functional, last a long time, look beautiful, be that timeless style, and very functional. I love them. I love working with them. And like I say, the different colors that are available now it's really fun to use, and it's a good product to work with. Okay, now let's talk about steps. Steps come up a lot in landscapes, and it is something that we have to address quite a bit anywhere where there's sloping down. So I want to talk about what to use, what types of materials, what's kind of, okay to go with, what's better, what's great, in my opinion. And so they just, if you have an all flat yard and there's no steps anywhere needed around your house, great. You're a step ahead of the game. We've used them quite a bit where there's already walkways. I try to eliminate steps as much as possible when we do brand new entries. We do a lot of pavers, obviously, and so we end up doing a lot of paver driveways and entries. And usually there's that little stoop that comes with the house near the front door. Contrary to popular belief, it is not poured with the foundation. It's not connected to the foundation. They pop out pretty easily. But for some reason, there's always a step right there. And if you can eliminate it, if you're doing a project, an entry or something, and you have the option to eliminate it, definitely, I don't like having steps. Just, it's a tripping hazard. If wheelchair access, there's any number of reasons why I wouldn't want steps if we don't need them. But on steeper areas, it makes a lot of sense. Or like on one job I'm thinking of, we did in Trilogy, they had the walkway ramping up from the driveway, but the yard sloped down pretty hard towards where guests would park along the street. And they wanted to get a walkway from the street again, kind of through the lawn and getting up to the house. And so there were steps were required. What do you use for steps? You can use concrete, you can use block, and I think probably one of the best things you could use is a natural stone. And so I want to kind of go over how each of those work. So concrete has to be poured in place and formed, and the face of that step has to be formed. And it's okay. Again, it's concrete, it's going to crack, and you'll probably need a professional to do that. Airvol has a really great product called Moro stones, and other manufacturers have a similar, these kind of just working kind of big giant Lego blocks. There's no connectivity to them. You just kind of glue them together. But locally, the Moro stones, that's a really good option. And natural stones are available, and I want to talk about those on the other side of the break. So hang out, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on California's Central Coast. Here on 1240 AM and 99.5 FM, KSMA.
Chaparral Pavers. I love to come home.com. Imagine the flickering flames and warmth of a fire pit, soothing sounds of trickling water, decorative lighting, highlighting your landscape at dusk. Driveways and patios, not only functional, but a work of art. This is what Chaparral Pavers does for your landscape lifestyle. You'll love to come home. Chaparral Pavers. Visit us now at ilovetoComeHome.com.
If you're thinking about installing a new paver patio or paver driveway, check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetoComeHome.com. Serving the Central Coast since 2001, Chaparral Pavers will work with you to get it right and complete the job to your specifications, as customer service is king at Chaparral Pavers. Paver driveways are stylish and durable and guaranteed to never crack. If your old concrete driveway or entryway is a hazardous cracking mess, it's time to call Chaparral Pavers. Go to their website, ilovetoComeHome.com. You'll find all the information you need. Check out photographs of past installations and reviews from Central Coast residents who have used Chaparral Pavers. And don't forget, all installations are guaranteed for the life of your home. So check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetoComeHome.com. Chaparral Pavers, they'll make you love to come home. Now, back to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on KSMA.
And we're back. Okay, we are talking about the use of Flagstone and today's current uses for it in comparison to what they used to use it for in the old days, and also steps. And right towards the end, before the break there, we were talking about different types of steps. So I wanted to continue down that road, but just a quick word on the Flagstones. There's tons of different colors and types now. And I'm recommending using the big, large pieces, using them for not necessarily for patios. I don't think they make great patios. They make awesome walkways through the garden to little outside seating areas around fire pits, benches, walkways that you would normally use a lot for taking trash out, for picking up mail. Maybe even outside when you open your car door to step out. We did that recently on a job, and if the driveway isn't wide enough and you're opening the door and you're having to step out into the garden in the bark or stepping on plants, you can put a couple pieces of Flagstone right there. Simple, easy project, and can be very functional and beautiful in your landscaping. So now we started talking about steps. They can be made out of concrete, which I think is okay. We talked about Moro stones being these kind of building block type of blocks that are smooth on all the sides and finished face on all sides, so they can really be turned or interlocked any way. And you just kind of take a landscape block adhesive, which it can be found at any hardware store, and you kind of glue them together. And you can I like to make the big ones. They have one about 8 by 11, they're about 4 inches tall. And make those the tops, because you want to turn them sideways, and you want that step to be at least 12 inches deep. Now, when you're talking about codes for steps, you cannot exceed 8 inches. So please never make a step any higher than 8 inches. And you don't want them too short either. I mean, even short steps are legal, but 2-inch, 3-inch steps, to me, in my mind, they're just tripping hazards. So they should be somewhere around 7 to 8 inches. Do not exceed 8 inches. Even if you went 6.5 or 7 inches, 7.5, somewhere in there. And if you're making multiple steps, they should be exactly the same height. So take your distance and the height that you have. And if it's, say for instance, you had 18 inches of height, do 3 6-inch steps so that they're all the same. And if you had 21 inches of height, you can do 3 7-inch steps, so that when you're walking up those steps, they feel the same. You don't have 2 6-inch steps and then an 8-inch step. That becomes a tripping hazard. So stay consistent, stay within that range, and the marl stones make a perfectly fine step. Now, I think the best steps that we've found out about doing, our landscaping and doing these necessary things to get around the yard, there is a product called natural stone steps, and I don't see them a lot. I don't know if they haven't been out for a long time or what the deal is with them, but they are extremely heavy, so that is probably the only downside. But it's almost like a giant flagstone, which is why I thought it kind of fit in today's topic. The hardest part really is getting them where they need to go, and once it's there, there's very little to do. You just set it in, level it, you're done. They're basically already 7 inches high. And the way you control the height on that, if you need to, is to either raise or lower it up with road base or sand or something. If it needs to be lowered, you just dig it in to the ground and make it lower. And once you level it, it's kind of set. I mean, there's very little work, and the look is absolutely gorgeous. I've seen different colors, different widths, 3 foot, 4 foot, 7 inches, 8 inches. And that's the thing. If you plan out your project ahead of time really good, there was not a whole lot to do. And it's just the heaviness of the stone, getting it, if it's in a backyard or down a slope. Really, the main issue is just getting that stone where it needs to be. So, I mean, the steps are good when they're needed. If you don't need steps, eliminate them where you can. And that's really the best advice I can give you on that. So thanks for tuning in today and joining us here on Patio Side Chats with Chaparral. You can always check us out on our website at ilovetoComeHome.com. You can find us on Twitter if you've got something to say, or if you want to have influence on the topics for this show. You can also email us at fernando@ilovetoComeHome.com. If you miss any part of this show or want to hear other previous shows, check out our YouTube channel. You can get there by typing in Chaparral Pavers on YouTube, or you can always go to our website, ilovetoComeHome.com, and you'll see the link there to all the shows. So check us out. If you have any questions, give us a call, and we will see you next week.
This has been Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers. Go to ilovetoComeHome.com to find out more, or call 805-588-6917. And be sure and tune in next week at this same time for Patio Side Chats here on KSMA.